All right, top of the hour. Welcome, everyone, to our quick 30-minute webinar. My name is Phil Corbin, Sales and Marketing Director here at Variphy. I'm here today with Matt Sykes and Dan Schmidt, our Superstar Systems engineers. And in today's webinar, we're going to cover a new feature. It's a web-based DID inventory management system included in our most recent release. We'll highlight the DID import feature today. We're going to start off with a quick overview of Variphy, what we do. We'll jump into a live demo, guide you through the new feature. We'll pause for Q&A, get some of your questions answered. During the demo, if you have any questions, make sure to ask them in the Q&A panel at the bottom right of the screen. After Q&A, we'll reward one lucky attendee a $50 Amazon gift card, so hang around to see what you may have won. Quick overview of Variphy. So we are the preferred analytics and management solution for Cisco collaboration. We provide industry-leading CDR reporting and analytics, customizable dashboards and widgets, UCCX reporting, remote phone control, change management, but today we're going to be covering DID management. If you have any other questions on any of our other features, we can most definitely take them offline and get those answered. So let's get into it. Matt, he's going to show us DID import.
Awesome. Thank you, Phil. Hello and welcome all. This is Matt Sykes with Variphy, Systems Engineer. And as Phil just mentioned, today we will be covering the DID management module with a specific focus on the DID block import functionality. That functionality will be available in Variphy 12.13. It is due out end of March. So before I start going to today's content, I do want to preface that we have a pre-existing webinar on DID management from our 12.1.1 release when we first rolled out the DID management module. That is easily obtainable from our variphy.com website underneath the webinars header. Feel free to register for any upcomings. Towards the bottom of the page, we have our previous or our past webinars. Here we go. And there it is right there. DID number management. This was our first version of the DID management module. And this webinar pretty much walks you through kind of the 101 or the fundamentals of the module itself. So please feel free to go ahead and log into our website, download and review that video at your leisure. So without further ado, we'll hop back to my lab and get the show on the road. Okay, I'm going to jump right into DN and DID management. Now, I just want to make a little note point here. This module collectively aims to replace the need for the quote unquote working spreadsheet within your organizations. Now, we definitely know that working spreadsheets with DNs and or DIDs can definitely fall out of sync very quickly if they're not updated or maintained very, very well. So with Variphy, the DN and DID management module, we give the actual querying capability to the software to pull back all of the DNs from your UCM at a moment's notice. Starting in the DN management first, just to show you how that simulation would work. If you're not familiar with the DID or with DN management, please feel free to inquire about it or utilize it if you have it available in your system. Now, in a very quick search here, I looked for 11XX or the 1100 range. I know I have device assignment within here. So I can see all of the inactives, actives, as well as the availables. If I wanted to be more specific and show me actives only, most certainly I could. My 1100 range, I do have 7 or so here. I do see the assignment definition over on the right pane here. So with DID management, we took it one step further. DIDs obviously do not live natively within UCM. However, they do route calls over the gateways to these internal UCM DNs. Now, we have the availability to not worry about spreadsheets here, so we can use this same single pane of glass to actually query all of the DID information as well. What we would need for that firstmost would be to create some definitions for it, some DID sites, but ultimately the DID blocks. DID sites are the containers for the blocks. I have a couple example blocks in here for Knoxville. We can take a quick look at real briefly just to show you what that search functionality looks like. We'll look at Knoxville. I'll pick one of the my blocks. There's the range it populates. And let me just search for anything in that range. We'll list out only the first 25. But the top 3 are all I really want to see at this moment. So this is a quick example of a block that I do have mapped to internal DNs within our UCM. You can see the DID, full DID here. You can see its status, cluster it is associated to, and then also its internal UCM DN. These actually are utilized by a mapping exceptions here, but I will get into those a little later. But once again, similar search functionality. We see the device association. We've mapped the DID to the internal DN, and we have the option for tags, which are very powerful, and we'll get into those as well. So to first get the blocks configured, it was a manual process, but now we actually have the functionality of the DID import util. We do include a downloadable CSV template for review to help you with ease of perhaps loading your DIDs into a sheet. Now, this is all that that sample template looks like, that CSV, and everything in here is not needed to be defined. Let's give you a quick example. So here we are. So here's a quick example of an import file I have. So this is the template. Whether or not we utilize all the columns in here remains to be seen, case by case basis, system by system basis perhaps. But definitely column A is certainly required. The DID numbers are definitely required. That is the header row, and the column A DID numbers are the only required pieces of this import file. We see DID range end, CUCM DN, route partition, and CUCM cluster. Those four are all optional. I will cover those pieces in a moment or two, but I just want to make everyone aware that we have tried to make the import functionality as well as the file for the importing as user-friendly and simplistic as we could. Now, noting that, I have a few I just want to run past you. There are two real, I guess, import file types. One is going to be, DID numbers, where we're really only focusing on just the DID numbers that are owned. So for instance, like I had mentioned, column A is the only required column. And all we need here is to simply give me a sequential list of all of the DIDs, whether they're sequential, whether there are some missing, but definitely all of the owned DIDs by the organization need to be in column A. This is I call it the DID number import type. The secondary type would be the DID ranges, where we can have contiguous ranges of the DIDs within column A and column B. Obviously, this would create 4 different DID blocks because they are 4 separate NPA NXXs. Those could be loaded in a DID number import file style as well. However, I do want to make certain that incorrect blocks are not included with an import. For instance, these are Chicagoland area NPA NXXs, well, at least area codes, but I would not want these imported underneath maybe a DID site of San Fran or Nashville or Dallas, for instance. Just want to be cognizant of exactly the DIDs that we have in the files and what blocks they're for and sites they would be associated therein. Excuse me. So these are the 2 style files that we would have, utilizing the numbers or utilizing the ranges. Now, with the numbers as well, I do want to preface that the hyphens, parentheses, any dot notations, no need to worry about that sitting in your spreadsheet. The import functionality will actually strip those out of the file during the import. So there's no need to worry about parens, hyphens, or dot notations in the DID definitions. So with these 2 file styles, like I had mentioned, these other pieces are optional, but they do have value, and I am going to get to those in a moment. Right now, actually, I suppose. Here is another one I have. This is another DID number style import file, but this one I'm actually utilizing this UCMDN field, not utilizing the range N because we're using the DID number list, if you will. I'm not using the range, but we are using the CUCMDN, which signifies that this is actually a mapping exception. Now, 7,000 does not necessarily match to an 1100 as far as digit patterns are concerned. So we can very easily map this through the import file based off of this field. And if we want to include a partition for that mapping exception, we could, as well as cluster. We can map these to multiple clusters in the verify system if there are multiple clusters in the environment. Just very briefly looking at that, and we will circle back to that in a moment, but I want to start with the other 2 import styles first. So we've got a couple Knoxvilles. As we can see, we've got our ranges there, numbers, exclusions, some tags, but I want to focus on the import. So let's pick on my DID site of Chicago, because I know these are Chicagoland files I have. I will start with the DID number file type, which is this guy right here. Obviously, also, if there are in the I do want to mention this as well, in the DID number listings that you have in column A, if there are any, I suppose, DIDs that are not owned, or gaps, if you will, in your ranges, obviously we would just exclude those. And actually, the nice thing about it is the import functionality will auto-discover any missing contiguous DID line numbers and actually create exclusions within the application for them. And we will run through that right now. So I will map to DID Chicago, DID number Chicago blocks. Chicago cluster association. I only have one cluster in this lab, but in an environment that has multiple UCM clusters, these DIDs can be mapped to multiple clusters as well. Cluster association. This is where pretty much the magic happens with regards to mapping the DID to an internal to an internal DN. Now, within my lab environment, they're just 4-digit DNs, but if they were longer, obviously we can match the rightmost digits at will. If there are any site code prefixes, we can append those to the DN as well. And the route partitions, we can specify the route partitions that we want for this block, or we can override it and blanket it with any route partition. I will go ahead and run this import routine. And we can see from that import file of DID numbers, it imported 4 blocks for me. For Chicago, here are the ranges. Here are the total numbers of DIDs that were imported and exclusions. As I had mentioned, in the DID number list in column A, if we are missing any contiguous DID numbers, the import util will auto-discover those and create exclusions for them. And I can show you that in the 253 block, and we have a few more in the 630682. Okay, very well. Once those are imported, they are then highlighted green in the DID configure section, as we see here. I believe my 708253 had exclusions. It sure does. No tags yet or mapping exceptions, but we will get there. So I want to take a quick look at those. So we can either edit this block from the pencil to edit, or just clicking on the block name. One half and dozen the other. And we see here that the name is the name that is assigned to it is the NPA NXX from the import file itself. Description labeled with import block, the site we selected, our number range info. But here are the exclusions. Here are the exclusions that the import utility was able to auto-discover by those sequential numbers, DIDs missing from the list. And whether or not they were ranges, smart enough to make ranges them there for you. If you need to add on top of that, by all means, you most certainly could. And then the association carries over as well. And the tag numbers, we'll come back to that in a moment, but that was also covered in the earlier webinar that we ran when we released in 12.1.1. Okay, so now I have a couple blocks imported from the DID number style of an import file, but now I want to maybe use the range file. This guy right here, where I'm using contiguous ranges that the organization owns. Obviously, if the organization did not own this full range or one of these full ranges, I would recommend utilizing the other import style type. You can actually just sequentially list out the numbers in column 8 that are owned by the organization. Perhaps maybe you do have a large organization and own many of full DID blocks. You can very easily entertain these as well. So let me just go ahead and queue up the import routine one more time. Pick on Chicago again. Got actually 4 different NPA NXXs to pick on here in that file. So I will put solidify the DID range import style, map that, cluster association. If I had multiple clusters, once again, I could map this to multiple clusters if needed. I'm matching my 4 most right digits, and I'll just blanket with the any partition. Import there. There are 4 new DID blocks that were created. We see the ranges. They are sequentials. There are no exclusions because they are just ranges. So if there are exclusions or missing DIDs that are not owned, as I had mentioned, within that range block, safest to go with the DID number list in column A, as we previously ran. But once again, close that. It will highlight the 4 new blocks recently imported and added. We can very easily edit and look at any one of them and modify anything at a given notice if we needed to. If we need to add some mapping exceptions after the fact, potentially we certainly could. But now I want to show you one last import style. It's going to be the one with the DN mapping exceptions. That was my San Fran file. Go ahead and add that in. Where DID numbers, number one is probably the safest go-to that we'll probably see with regards to import files, so that there's no guesswork, and it's just give me all of the DIDs that you own. We'll do all of the exclusions and auto discovery needed. Okay, same rules apply here for most right digits for my internal UCM lab. Have all those. Now, but these though, let me pull the import file back up for you. These are this is the one that has the DID numbers, but also has this UCM DN field populated here with corresponding translations. That's why we're going to utilize this in that column and translate the 7,000 and map it down to the 1100, 7001 to 1101, so on and so forth. Now, the route partition column, you can very certainly incorporate that as well. If you do not include it, it will default to any route partition. So let's go ahead and run this import now. And the DID results will specify as well. Okay, we've imported the San Fran block of 415604. There's our number range, total 17, but it mapped 17 of those DNs. Go ahead and close this. It is highlighted for us because it's newly imported. Go ahead and edit it. I'm going to go right to the CUCM association, and right there we will see our DN mapping exceptions from that file. Pull that back to the forefront once again. So the 7,000 being mapped to the 1100, 01 to 1101, so on and so forth. The route partition, which I did leave blank, will inherit any all partitions. Obviously, if there was a specific route partition we want to specify for that DID, by all means, we can certainly include that into the import file, or we can toggle it after the fact. Okay, obviously, with the DN mapping exceptions, we see that a lot with service numbers, main lines, fax lines, write faxes, and a lot of different translation patterns within the UCM. Exit out of that. And the last import I did want to show you real briefly, pardon me, is, here we go, an invalid file or invalid characters within a file. So for instance, I'm picking on Dallas here, and I have a list here, but I actually have a couple that are actually invalid characters. So this 7,000 or these three X's would obviously be a non-numeric and would be omitted from the import, as well as this is an O and not a 0. So I'm just going to run this through just to kind of simulate what a bad import file or a bad character sequence within an import file could look like with the import. So we will go ahead and import that Dallas guy. I do have Dallas. Let's go ahead and browse to that file. And here we go, the ID numbers. Dallas invalid. There, let me specify my cluster, map the association, and import. And the import results are done. It says total number of 9 DIDs have been imported for Dallas on the 214555 block. However, 2 of the numbers were invalid, and it will list them out right there for you in red. So we know very easily what was wrong with that line item within the import file. That's an O, it's not a 0. These are X's, not numerics. I'll leave them specified. They're not supported in number format. Perfect. But then if we wanted to look at them, obviously the ones that were imported were. And there are no exceptions because nothing was mapped. Okay, that's fine. All right, so I have covered the import files. Okay, we have the invalid guy. And now let's go ahead and do some searching and playing with little tags, a couple tags, I suppose. So let's pick on maybe San Fran. It'll populate well, if I only had the one DID block defined for San Fran, so that's why I had no other option but for it to select that. But if there were numerous, I can select the block I want for my DID site, and then it will automatically populate your number range in here. Then all we would need to do is populate some search criteria here for it, whether or not we use something more specific or whether or not we just use an X wildcard and search it openly for this whole range. Now, this range example is only 17 numbers, so I get away with the first listing of the 25 here. We'll see in a moment. And these will have the 415604s mapped to the corresponding 1100 DNs that I have inside my UCM. So we can see them right here. Perfect. So we see this 7000 mapped to the 1100, just as I had. Where is it? There we go. Just like I had for my import file. So we see the 7000, it is mapped to an internal DN of 1100. That, in this UCM, this 1100 is assigned to this device here with alerting name, description, partition number type, and the cluster as well. Now we have the availability to put inline tags on these as well. So for instance, if I wanted to create a tag for this, I most certainly could. Mainline for, I'll throw one, and you can have multiple tags as well. This main branch perhaps. I can create those tags real quickly, save them, boom, inline, created at a moment's notice. And now you actually even have the search capability of searching by these tags as well. Now, whether or not we're utilizing tag functionality for location information, whether it's for maybe some type of a status, maybe it's reserved for the executives, something along those lines. Perhaps maybe we want to be, location, well, maybe not. Maybe we want to be location based. Let's see. Go ahead and create that. And then in a moment's notice, we can easily search any one of those if we wanted to, in addition to our status flags. I should only pull back one because I only had one with San Francisco on it. But most certainly, we can also kind of tag in ranges as well. And I'll show you that in a quick second or two. Search comes back. Here we are. Here's the 7001, but we know that we're searching for anything X in this range with a tag with these status flags and a tag of San Fran. Now, there was only one that I had to find as such. Well, so certainly that's why we're only seeing the one, but I could easily inline tag more, or if I wanted to, I can go right to that block specifically. So let me pull up that block. 415, let's go into tag numbers. We see the tags I just inline created, but now maybe I wanted to blanket tag a range. Now, you can do that in this block, outside of, in another block, whatever the preference is. These can be individuals, as you can see that those were inherited from my inlines, or I can do a range. So let's say 7002 to 010, and let's just call this, how about that? How about IT? And we'll call this secondary branch, maybe. Create that. And now this range, once I go ahead and save this, will tag all of those DIDs. Now let me hop back to that search functionality, drop off this tag, and let's search this one last time. And now that should give us 7002 through 7010 with the IT tag as well as the secondary branch that I just created from the block itself. So you have the availability to tag at the block level, or you can inline tag as well. So here we are. Very easily was able to tag those. Now I can search on that stuff if I was so inclined. And or export this information. So when I export this information at a moment's notice, because this is reading Call Manager live, every time you hit the blue button for view results, that is. Obviously, you don't want to be exporting maybe stale or a stale browser window. But within the export options we have here, we have the detail columns that we were seeing in the background that are shaded at the moment, but they are all turned on and added in by default. If you wanted to remove any of these, by all means, you most certainly could. Or if you wanted to reorder them, go right ahead. The export report generation will include all the summarization for them, as well as organizing it by status or number, your preference, and then obviously the deliverable. So let me go ahead and just generate a quick little export for this San Fran block here. That's going to jump up on my other monitor, but I will drag that over in a moment. It most certainly did. Pull this over for us. So very quick summarized DID export report here that we have. See the DID block, imported block. We can see the range, the site it belongs to, the cluster, the search criteria that we use to search for what we did, and then the status breakdown. Maybe I didn't want to look at availables and inactives. Maybe I only wanted to focus on active. I could certainly have unchecked those status flags and ran the export or rerun the export, preference of course. But then within that, we'll give the summarization breakdown. So there's 3 available DIDs in this 17 number range that we have. Those are the 3 availables right here that would be green in the DID management search. Scroll down just a bit. There's the inactives and unassigned DIDs. There's 7 of those. And here they are. Those are the current status. I do have tags on them. The tag column came in from the export definitions that were default. And then obviously, and then below, obviously the actives. So we see the actives, the DIDs, the corresponding DN tags, as well as then the most important device assignment, potentially description. So we have that for you very easily at a moment's notice through the export. So I do believe I'm running a light on content at the moment. Let me just double check and make sure that I have covered everything. Yeah, I mean, definitely additional functionality coming down the pipeline for this. Nothing I will speak to at the moment, but Variphy here, we're always keen on developing and being proactive rather than reactive. So I want to thank everyone for your time today. And if there are any questions on this content, we will have this webinar available on our website very soon. And as well, and as always, we're very willing to respond to any inquiries or assistance that may be needed from the customer base. Thank you as always, and enjoy your evening.
All right. It's time for Q&A.
Yep. Hey, Phil. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Phil. We do have a few questions I want to address here. So the first question comes from Chuck. Chuck's question reads, does the import files that you're showing need to be from your application, or can I simply map to my carrier provided list? So Chuck, the answer to that really is it must come from our application. So we're specifically looking at the headers that we impose in that template. So we see it just as an easier method just to plug, copy paste those DIDs either in the single column like Matt showed or in the range columns, but the headers need to be the same for us to see it and actually import those. So we would just advise to download that template from our application and plug those individual numbers into our downloadable template copy. Good question, Chuck. Thanks.
All right. Any other questions?
Question coming in from a Megan. Megan says, I'm a current customer, but I only see the DN management link. How do I get the DID management, and is there an extra cost? So if you are currently only seeing the DN management, Megan, that means that you likely purchased this pre-1206 when DID management first came out. As long as you purchased DN management, you get an upgrade at no charge to the full DID management. You just need to contact us so we could recode your license to give you the DID management component. If you did not purchase the DN management component prior for anyone else, that would be an extra product within our stack. So the DID management tool really embeds the DN and DID components, so that's sold as one separate product in regards to the rest of the stack. Any other questions from any of the other attendees on today's webinar? All right, Phil, that's all the questions I'm seeing coming in for now.
All right. Now the moment we've all been waiting for. The winner of our $50 Amazon gift card is Chuck Smith. Thank you for attending today. You have won a $50 Amazon gift card. Your account manager will be in touch on how we can get that sent out to you. Once again, thanks a lot for attending our DID webinar. If you want to sign up for any additional webinars, please go to variphy.com/company/webinars. We have a lot of webinars there you can register and join. Also, if you're interested in any other features, please reach out to us at sales@verify.com, or you can sign up for a free trial very quickly at verify.com/trial. Thank you all for joining.
Thank you. Bye-bye.